Hello, here's hoping you're all very well. In preparation for the forthcoming series of courses on Irish mythology on the Celtic Source website, I thought I would address one of the most commonly asked questions I get when we're talking about the relationship between Welsh myth and Irish myth, and that is, what is the relationship between Danu, as in the mother of the Tuatha De Danann, and Dôn? Now, one of the most mysterious figures in Welsh mythology is this Dôn, the founding mother of the family whose exploits are told in the fourth branch of the Mabinogi. We know nothing about her apart from her name, but her name itself is actually very interesting. We know a great deal about her children, particularly Arianrhod and Gwydion, who come into conflict in the fourth branch of the Mabinogi, but also Amaethon and Govannon, who are mentioned in the Arthurian prose classic How Culhwch Wan Olwen. The names of these last two children in particular hint at their divine status. Amaethon's name means something like divine farmer, while Govannon means something like divine smith. Their brother Gwydion could also have been some type of divine figure in the distant past, even though in the fourth branch of the Mabinogi he acts more like a powerful human magician more than a god. But there are mythological undertones in Gwydion's story that could be read as vestiges of an older myth about a god who had the power to resurrect the dead, but you'll have to follow the Mabinogi course on the website to learn more about that. Among Dôn's progeny, Arianrhod stands out as the only one of her daughters to have an obvious role in Welsh myth. In the Welsh story triads, we find that Arianrhod's father was Beli Mawr, who may have been a historical tribal leader who fought against Caesar over 2,000 years ago. This could lead us to assume that Beli Mawr was one of Dôn's consorts. If so, Dôn and her children are either mythical figures who evolved out of historical figures that were alive about 2,000 years ago, or at least mythical figures that the Celtic nobility of Iron Age Britain considered their ancestors, real or otherwise. The Welsh Dôn is often linked to Danu, an Irish ancestor goddess. The name Danu has itself long been a subject of scholarly debate, as it holds a significant place in both Celtic and Hindu mythologies. While the name itself isn't found anywhere in medieval Irish literature, modern scholars have reconstructed the form Danu based on a form of the widely used Danann, which is found in the name of the Irish gods, the Tuatha De Danann, meaning the tribe or people of Danu. But Danu's name could also be a combination of other elements. In Irish mythology, there is also a goddess by the name of Anu, called the Mother of the Gods, a very similar role to that of Danu, causing some to speculate whether Danu could be what's known as a contraction of Dia Anu, which simply means goddess Anu. But there is, of course, another potential lineage for Danu's name. The Celtic languages of both Ireland and Wales are descended from the same Proto-Indo-European language that was spoken on the Russian steppes around 6,000 years ago. Another descendant of this language is Sanskrit, first spoken in northern India sometime between 3,500 and 3,000 years ago. Many of the religious texts of Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism were written down in Sanskrit, making this Vedic culture of India a distant relation to Celtic culture. Welsh, Irish and Sanskrit speakers all share the same basic Indo-European heritage. We would expect, therefore, to find some basic similarities between these different cultures. For example, there is a Hindu goddess with the remarkably similar name of Danu. This Vedic Danu is a water goddess, often associated with the primeval waters. She is mentioned in the Rig Veda as the mother of the Danavas, a supernatural race, sometimes described as power-seeking demons. The Vedic name Danu can be derived from the earlier Proto-Indo-European root denha, meaning to run or to flow. This Proto-Indo-European root may also be the origin of the river name Danube, as well as other river names like Don, Dnieper and Dniester. The connection between Danu and the ancient Celtic river Danuvius is also very suggestive. So is this the etymological lineage for the Irish Danu? If you would like to learn more about Celtic mythology, especially if you're researching a historical novel or fantasy fiction, or simply want to understand how profound Celtic myths really are, then you're very welcome to sign up for the online courses at celticsource.online. The courses include in-depth explorations of all the major Celtic texts and group discussions where you're invited to share your own thoughts and interpretations. 20th century scholarship has largely accepted this Proto-Indo-European etymology for the name Danu. But in 2002, the linguist Eric Hamp challenged these theories. Instead of deriving the name from the earlier Proto-Indo-European language, he proposed an alternative origin in the reconstructed early Celtic name Duonu, which translates as noble, as in aristocrat. This would also make sense considering Danu's role as ancestral mother to a race of supernatural nobles, her Tuatha De Danann. So what do you think? Do we derive the Irish Danu from the earlier Proto-Indo-European Denha, or from the earlier Celtic Duonu? So what does this all tell us about the Welsh dawn? On the surface of it, there is a clear similarity between Dawn and Danu, these two founding Celtic mothers of divine, or at least semi-divine lineages. It would be easy to assume that both evolved out of the same basic mythological figure, perhaps not that dissimilar to the Vedic Danu in India. But for some historical linguists, a closer examination reveals that it's actually quite difficult to connect the Welsh dawn to these other names. The earlier Brythonic name, comparable to Middle Irish Danu, would have been Donu, but according to the way the Brythonic language evolved, it would have become the early Welsh Din or Dane, not Dawn. Having mapped how the Celtic languages evolved, for historical linguists, Dawn doesn't appear to be of the same origin as Danu. So where does Dawn come from? Well, in recent decades, another origin for her name has been proposed. It could derive from the earlier Celtic word Gdon or Don, which meant place, ground or earth. This etymology obviously opens up a fascinating avenue of interpretation, as dawn therefore could be understood as a symbolic representation of the earth itself. Her name is made all the more significant when considering its use in the medieval name Plant Dawn, which translates as children of earth if we're following this new proposed etymology. This is a name given to her many descendants amongst the noble houses of Gwynedd, the ancient kingdom in northwestern Wales. Like other aristocracies in many other traditions, these nobles saw themselves as rooted in a specific territory that they had inherited from their mythical ancestors, Dawn perhaps being one of the more important. Delving deeper into the linguistic roots, we also encounter the related Celtic word for human being, donios, which literally translates as earthling. This connection between dawn and donios finds further echoes in the Celtic languages, such as Irish duina and Welsh dyn, all basically meaning person or human being. There are parallels here with another notable family in the Mabinogi, these being the children of Llyr, who feature in the second branch of the Mabinogi. Llyr basically means something like the sea. This would mean that in the Mabinogi, we have two supernatural families with mythical ancestors, one lineage bearing the potential name Children of the Earth, and the other Children of the Sea. Are these suggestions of primordial ancestor gods who are identified with wild or natural or geological phenomena, perhaps akin to the Titans in Greek mythology? Either way, Dawn's role as a symbol of the earth itself suggests she could have been an ancient and primordial force of creation, and perhaps even the very essence of humanity.